And on this Veteran Day, when we pause to give thanks for the veterans that walk among us, and even more so for those veterans that do not walk among us because of the sacrifices that they made, we pause to remember and to thank. Earlier, we recognized the spouses and families and friends of veterans, and you should know that every family that includes a veteran has sacrificed. It may have been through personal risk, or even worse, it may have been from that agonizing wait of waiting to see if their loved one would return or not. And you are all like eagles. You watch over us, you protect us, and for many, that mission is completed. For others, it continues. And we thank you. Like an eagle, I was pondering how to give and how to describe my thanks for those veterans who have fought to protect us. As I thought about it, I remembered a poem. I remembered a poem written by a veteran that I've read before, and one that gave me a taste of what many of our veterans who served in combat have gone through. And I'd like to read it today, and please forgive me, it is a little raw at times, but I do believe it is still appropriate. The words of this poem were written by a man named Larry Rotman. He was a Vietnam veteran and a survivor of the Tet Offensive of 1968. Listen to his words. Tet stunned and very nearly scalped by 100 razored fragments from a 122-millimeter rocket. My unconscious carcass was hastily carretted to the Cu Chi Hospital and added to the long line already there and awaiting attention. An anguished and blood-sotted doctor, too weary and rushed and young for what he'd already been conscripted to do, glanced at my cranial lacerations, shook his head sadly, and went on to the next American teenager, who obviously had a far better survival probability. But an Army nurse, someone told me later, just as weary and rushed and young, had already seen enough of death that night and simply decided to buck the odds one time. Nobody croaks on Sissy, she warned both me and God. And she was right. I didn't die. In fact, I suspect the more grievous wounds were hers. Why do we take the time to thank our veterans each year? Because in our hearts and our minds, they are like eagles. They are the ones that we picture soaring over us, protecting us, keeping us from harm. And of course, there is a very good reason why we have built up that image in our minds. Because all too often, our veterans are called to be the eagle, the protector, even at the risk of their own life. Every veteran took a chance. Some, like me, were lucky. Some of us spent our time in service at home, and the very lucky of us spent that time at home flying as often and as long as we could. So not all military service is necessarily difficult. But for many others, they lived through nothing short of a temporary hell. The poem that I read to you is about two real people. One gravely wounded soldier, one scared young nurse, both thrust into the middle of a war not of their choosing. And they both suffered grievous wounds that day. And I am certain that they both carry the effects of those wounds with them to this day. And there's another story about this young nurse named Sissy that I want to tell you about. This one who would not allow her patient to die. On a different day during her service in Vietnam, she was a member of a medical unit that came under attack by the enemy, a mortar attack. As the attack began, she made her way safely to one of the trenches. And as she watched others run toward her in safety, she witnessed a soldier hit and go down. And while that mortar attack continued, she ran from her trench, grabbed him, and dragged him back to safety. Why do we take the time to set aside a day to thank our veterans? Because in our hearts and minds, they are like eagles, protecting us, soaring over us, keeping us from harm, even at the risk of their own life. You know that stories of bravery and sacrifice have come from every war and every action ever taken by our veterans. And probably right now you should know something about my family's history. You see, the majority of the men and even some of the women on my family tree, both sides, served in the military. In fact, I'm the rare person that didn't retire from the military and only served 4 years. Martin Shellabarger was at He served in that final battle of the Revolutionary War that resulted in the English surrender, and he was on our side, I might mention. Another ancestor was a part of Sherman's march through Georgia, and now that I live in Iowa, I can say he was also on our side. One of my grandfathers served in the Pacific during World War II and continued to serve in Korea and Vietnam as a tail gunner on bombers, everything from the B-24 to B-52. My stepfather served behind the lines in Korea as a demolition expert and served again in Vietnam. My father served in Vietnam as a 21-year-old Marine second lieutenant infantry platoon commander. And my stepmother served as well. When my family gets together, there are stories. Many stories. Because they are like eagles. Protectors, soaring over us, keeping us from harm. Why do we take the time to set aside a day to recognize and thank our veterans? Because without them, we are lost as a nation. Because they are like eagles. So do those veterans have something special that is lacking in the rest of us? I would argue that no, they don't. They truly have something special, but it is not lacking in us. Because I believe that we can all be like eagles. And I say this because I firmly believe in the words found in Isaiah this morning. And those words bear repeating, and I'll repeat them now. And I urge you to listen to them again with new ears. Apply them to your own life. When you feel too faint or powerless to act, remember these words. When you feel too old to matter, remember these words. When you feel too weak to continue, remember these words. Isaiah says, "Have you not known? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He does not faint or grow weary. His understanding is unsearchable. He gives power to the faint and strengthens the powerless. Even youths will faint and be weary, and the young will fall exhausted. But those who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint." Friends, there is strength to be found in those who follow God. You shall run and not be weary. You shall walk and not be faint. You shall mount up with wings like eagles. Like an eagle, protecting, soaring over us, keeping us from harm. We take a day each year to thank our veterans because they are like eagles. But I challenge you to also remember to never stop thanking your God who gives you the strength that you need every day to do His will. I challenge you to never stop thanking your God who picks you up when you fall exhausted. I challenge you to never stop thanking your God who lets you run and not be weary. The one who put those eagle's wings on your back. Truly, with God, there is nothing that we cannot do. God is our ultimate protector, soaring over us, keeping us from harm for all eternity. And this same God shares that power with us. You see, just as many of our veterans walk among us and teach us to protect others, our God walks among us and shows us how to watch over and love others. Just as veterans have died to protect us, our God as Christ died to protect and save us. Protector, soaring over us, keeping us from harm for all eternity, and sharing his power and strength with us. We take a day each year and say thank you to our veterans because they are like eagles. And I urge you to take the time each day to thank the God who gives you the strength to be like an eagle. Take the time each day to thank the God who gives us all of the benefits that we heard in our psalm today. As the psalmist says, he heals all our diseases, who redeems our life from the pit, who crowns us with steadfast love and mercy, who satisfies us with good as long as we live, so that our youth is renewed like the eagles. Did you hear what the psalm said? The psalm says the effect of these benefits from God, this healing us, redeeming us, loving us, having mercy on us, sharing his good with us, these benefits give us a youth that is renewed like the eagles. Like an eagle. Every one of us. God has all the power and majesty that we need to be like the eagle. And friends, we all have that God right inside of us. So we all have all that we need to be like the eagle. Our veterans have truly done and are doing amazing and shocking things. And they have endured and they are enduring trials beyond measure. And they have responded and they continue to respond like eagles. Our God has given us amazing and shocking things because he endured trials beyond measure so that we may respond like eagles. Be an eagle. Show God's love and God's power in all that you do. Rejoice that God shares his benefits with us, healing us, redeeming us, sharing his love and mercy so that we may live the life that is renewed like the eagles. May we all take a moment each and every day to give thanks to the God that renews us all like the eagle. And then may we all take a moment this day and personally reflect on the eagles in our lives. Like for me, Major Virginia Shellabarger, U.S. Army nurse, my stepmother, nicknamed Sissy, the nurse who fled from safety into harm's way. Because nobody croaks on Sissy. Like an eagle. Amen.